Have you ever felt the deafening silence that comes from someone who was once loudly, publicly, and proudly wrong about you? If you are watching this, it is because you are on the verge of witnessing or are already in the midst of one of the most profound and satisfying moments of divine justice. Someone in your life is having the rudest awakening imaginable, and the universe has handed it to them on a divine silver platter, all without you having to lift a single finger. There is a deep psychological truth that most people don't see the reality of a situation until it personally and publicly embarrasses them. It is in that moment of humiliation that the mask shatters, the ego stammers into silence, and the memory of every single time they doubted, dismissed, and disrespected you comes rushing back like a tidal wave of spiritual whiplash. You told them exactly who you were, not as a boast, but as a sacred warning. They chose not to listen. Today, we are not just talking about being right. We are diving deep into the soul-shaking moment they realize you are the storm they were praying would never come. And now they are completely, utterly, and beautifully humiliated by the truth they tried so desperately to deny. 1. They finally see the truth, but only after it cost them their mask. For the longest, most agonizing time, they constructed an entire reality around a single, fragile lie, that you were pretending. In their minds, your confidence had to be fake. Your inner peace had to be just a fragile front. Your vision for your life had to be a delusion. They could not wrap their minds around the possibility that someone like you, so authentic, so grounded, so unapologetically different, could actually be real. It was easier, safer for their own fragile ego to believe you were putting on an act. They whispered to themselves and to others that you were overreaching, that you were trying to be someone you fundamentally weren't. They needed this narrative to be true because the alternative, that you were genuine, would force them to look at their own inadequacies. But the divine truth you carry never needed to scream for attention. It never needed to announce itself with trumpets. It simply waited. It waited quietly, patiently, with the unshakable confidence of a celestial body following its ordained path. And now, that meticulously crafted mask they wore, a mask built from the cheap materials of pride, envy, competition, and outright denial, has not just cracked, it has shattered into a million irreparable pieces. You must understand this critical point. They didn't just misjudge you. That would be too simple. They built their entire identity, their sense of self-worth, around the desperate need to diminish you. They needed you to be less than them. It was the only way they could feel important, the only way they could silence the gnawing insecurity that kept them awake at night. So they joked behind your back, making your dreams the punchline. They rolled their eyes at every step of your progress, belittling your efforts. They deliberately downplayed every single win you had, no matter how small, framing it as luck or a fluke. Now, they are standing face to face with the very truth they swore would never see the light of day. And that truth is burning them. It's a fire that scorches their pride, not just because you turned out to be everything you said you were, but because you achieved it without needing to argue, chase, or prove a single thing to them. You just kept walking your path. The very same version of you that they relentlessly mocked is now the version that everyone else is inexplicably drawn to. Your light doesn't just shine for you. It has become a divine spotlight that exposes the darkness and fakery in others. And that is precisely where the humiliation cuts the deepest. They weren't just wrong about you in private. They were loudly and publicly wrong. They championed their incorrect assessment of you. They treated the real, authentic thing, you, like a fraud. And now, the fraud they projected onto you is gone, vanished like a mist, but you are still here. You are elevated. You are unbothered. You are divinely proven. They see it now with crystal clarity, and there is no backpedaling from this kind of profound spiritual awakening. Their false world didn't just collapse. It collapsed publicly, in front of the very audience they tried to poison against you. And the one person they thought they had all figured out is now the one they cannot stop thinking about. That is what divine truth does. It doesn't just reveal, it completely rewrites everything. And now, they are choking on the very disbelief they once tried to force-feed you. 2. Your consistency exposed their performance. There was always a fundamental, glaring difference between your approach and theirs. They were utterly obsessed with looking the part, while you were quietly and diligently focused on becoming it. Their entire existence was a performance. They showed off just enough to be praised by people who didn't know any better, by a shallow audience that valued style over substance. Everything they did was performative, loud, meticulously calculated, and strategically designed for applause. They craved external validation like a drug, and their actions were always tailored to get their next fix. Meanwhile, you were in the background, away from the glaring lights of public opinion, doing the hard, sacred work that nobody clapped for. You were engaged in the kind of labor that takes excruciating patience, immense discomfort, and unwavering discipline. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were simply trying to be true to the divine calling placed on your life. And in their superficial worldview, they mistook this quiet dedication for weakness. They saw your lack of showmanship and assumed you were failing. They measured success by how many people were watching them. You measured success by how many inner demons you defeated in the sacred silence of your own journey. They looked at your quiet, methodical consistency and concluded that you were stuck, slow, or unambitious. But here is the glorious truth. While they were sprinting in frantic circles, chasing fleeting attention, you were building something eternal. You were laying a foundation so deep and so solid that they didn't even have the spiritual capacity to understand its architecture. Now that the dust has finally settled and the divine results are in, the difference between you and them could not be clearer or more stark. Everything they built with image, hype, and illusion has begun to fade. The social media likes, the vapid gossip, the carefully constructed illusions, it is all crumbling under the weight of its own emptiness, because it was never rooted in a single ounce of truth. But you are standing firm on a foundation that does not and cannot shake. You didn't just make noise, you made a lasting impact. You didn't chase fleeting relevance. You were creating an eternal legacy. And that is precisely why they feel so profoundly humiliated. What is truly eating them up inside is the slow, agonizing realization that your slow, quiet, steady path has decisively outlasted all of their flashy, dishonest shortcuts. They called you boring. They said you weren't moving fast enough. But you weren't just moving, you were moving in purpose. And now that your divine purpose is unfolding publicly, for all to see, they are scrambling for explanations. They are desperately trying to act unbothered, putting on a brave face, but deep down, they are being forced to admit to themselves that they got it completely and catastrophically wrong. You were never in a competition with them. You were in your calling. And they are finally, painfully realizing that the person they treated like a footnote is actually the one writing the chapter they can't escape. That's not just a loss they're mourning. They're mourning the death of the arrogant version of themselves that truly believed they had it all figured out. 3. They mistook your purity for passivity, and now they are drowning in shame. They constructed a flawed and dangerous equation in their minds. Because you didn't fight dirty, you must be soft. They saw that you refused to match their pettiness, so they assumed you were naive. You weren't loud, you weren't confrontational, and you refused to engage in their messy, low-vibrational drama. So, they confidently convinced themselves that you were weak. It was a fatal miscalculation. They were spiritually blind and could not see that your calm was actually a manifestation of incredible strength. They couldn't comprehend that your silence was an act of supreme self-control. They failed to understand that your peace came from a deep connection to divine power, not from passivity. They didn't realize it then, but the truth is now hitting them in relentless, crashing waves. And it is deeply embarrassing for them. They treated your grace like it was a character flaw. In their limited, conflict-oriented minds, if you weren't clapping back with insults, crying for attention, or desperately trying to prove your point, then you must not have had a valid point to begin with. They were so conditioned to noise that they couldn't recognize the power of stillness. They didn't understand that you weren't quiet because you lacked words. You were quiet because you possessed wisdom. You knew, with a certainty that came from a higher source, that it was a profound waste of your sacred energy to engage with people who were so deeply committed to misunderstanding you. Now, the unadulterated truth of your character is coming to light, and they are realizing just how tragically far off their assessment was. The very same qualities they foolishly thought made you an easy target are the very traits that have divinely elevated you. You kept your head down and focused on your work, but your integrity stood as tall as a mountain. You didn't react to their provocations, but you underwent a profound inner transformation. And now, they are left sitting with the stark, uncomfortable reality that while they were busy trying to provoke a chaotic version of you that never showed up, you were quietly becoming the version of yourself that simply cannot be touched by their negativity. What is so utterly humiliating for them is the fact that they had every single opportunity to see the real you. You were never hiding your light. You were just focused on tending to it. You were growing in the quiet places they didn't bother to look. You were healing in the sacred areas of your life they never even asked about. And now, they are forced to admit that they grossly underestimated someone who was operating 10 steps ahead of them the entire time. They didn't just misread you. They disrespected the divine spark within you. And what stings them the most is the dawning, soul-crushing realization that you were never beneath them. You were always, in every way that mattered, far beyond them. Now they are stuck with the shame of knowing they had front-row seats to your divine revolution and still managed to miss the entire show because they were too busy heckling from the audience. For they laughed at the blueprint, but now they desperately want the house. They laughed at you. They looked at your dreams and saw only delusion. They heard your vision and dismissed it as you not knowing your place. Every single time you dared to share a glimpse of your vision, your ideas, or your divinely inspired plans, they smirked behind your back and rolled their eyes right in front of your face. Their disbelief was a weapon they used to try and cut you down. They said it couldn't be done. They labeled you as too ambitious, too spiritual, too out there. They treated your God-given purpose like it was a cheap punchline. In their minds, you were living in a fantasy world while they were being realistic. But let's be brutally honest for a moment. Realism for them was just a pretty costume for their own fear. It was a convenient excuse they used to justify their own lack of faith and vision. They could not see what you saw because they were not divinely called to see it. Their spiritual eyes were closed. And instead of humbly admitting their lack of sight, they attempted to tear down what you were building. But what they failed to comprehend was that your blueprint wasn't based on fleeting trends, the shifting opinions of others, or their desperately needed approval. Your blueprint was divine. It was detailed by the hand of God, and most importantly, it was uniquely and exclusively yours. While they were eagerly watching and waiting for your inevitable collapse, you were quietly laying the foundation. You were laying it brick by painstaking brick, in the silence, fueled by faith. They didn't respect the messy, unglamorous early stages of your work because they didn't recognize what true, divine vision looks like in its rawest, purest form. They didn't know that the blueprint for your life had already been stamped and approved in heaven. So they laughed. They mocked. They threw seeds of doubt at you from every conceivable angle. But now, that same vision they ridiculed has materialized into something real, something tangible, something deeply rooted and unshakable. And they simply do not know how to process it. The path they swore would lead you nowhere has led you to a place of profound peace, unshakable purpose, and abundant fruit that their hands can never touch. Now, they want to understand it. They're suddenly asking questions, trying to reverse engineer your success. They want to figure out how you did it. But here is the truth they cannot handle. They didn't laugh because your dream was unrealistic. They laughed because, on a subconscious level, they knew you were onto something far too big for them to ever grasp. And that sacred potential in you terrified them. Now they want the house. They want the peace. They want the alignment. They want the divine favor that radiates from you. But they can never have the blueprint because it was never theirs to build with in the first place. And that is the truth that humbles them to their very core. A moment of connection with the God Connection family. If this message is penetrating the walls of your heart and speaking truth to the journey you have walked, I want you to know that you are not alone. This is God Connection, a sacred space for anointed ones who are waking up to their power and purpose. Before we continue, I invite you to officially join our family. Take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. By doing so, you are declaring that you are ready to receive the raw, unfiltered truth that will empower and elevate your spirit. Furthermore, this ministry is a labor of love, fueled by faith and the support of this incredible community. If you feel a stirring in your spirit and a desire to sow a seed into this fertile ground, to help us reach and awaken more souls across the globe, please consider using the Super Thanks button below this video to give a donation. A gift of $10 or any amount your heart feels led to give is not just a donation. It is an act of faith. It is you participating in the flow of abundance and helping to amplify this divine frequency of truth. Your support means the world to us. Now, let us return to the powerful revelation of your vindication. 5. Their entire persona was built on denying you. This was never about a simple dislike or a clash of personalities. It was far deeper and more insidious than that. For some of these people, their entire sense of self, their very value system, was meticulously crafted around the central idea that you would not, and could not, make it. You weren't just another person to them. You were the negative benchmark against which they measured their own success. You were the yardstick they used to feel superior. As long as you were visibly struggling, appearing confused, or doubting yourself, they felt safe. They felt like they had the upper hand. You were their secret, silent comparison point, the one they mentally referenced to reassure themselves that they were ahead in life. They convinced themselves they were more successful, more desirable, more intelligent, and more in control, all based on their flawed perception of your journey. Your perceived failure wasn't just a satisfying thought for them. It was structurally necessary for their ego to survive. They didn't hate you because you ever did anything wrong to them. They hated the imminent threat of who you were destined to become. Every time you showed a flicker of resilience after a setback, they got nervous. Every time you held your peace when they expected you to explode, they grew unsettled. Deep down, on a spiritual level, they could sense that there was something profoundly different about you. They sensed something sacred, something anointed, something utterly untouchable by their earthly standards. And that divine spark in you terrified them. So, instead of doing the hard work of dealing with their own crushing insecurity, they took the easy way out. They made you the villain in their inner narrative. They needed you to stay low. They needed you to stay quiet. They needed you to stay unsure of yourself so that they could continue feeling tall within their own self-created illusion. But now, that illusion has been irrevocably shattered. You have stepped into the radiant fullness of who God created you to be, and your light is undeniable. And the part that they simply cannot handle is that your rise doesn't just lift you up, it exposes them completely. Your truth has revealed just how paper-thin their false confidence always was. It shows that their perceived strength was always rooted in your silence and your self-doubt. Now that you are shining brightly, their entire identity is crumbling because it was never built on a foundation of authenticity. It was built on the shaky, stolen ground of keeping you beneath them. That is why your glow, your success, your peace bothers them so intensely. It's not because you're doing well. It's because your success forces them to face the ugly truth about themselves. They were never actually ahead. They were just banking on your doubt to keep their own leaking ship afloat. Now that you believe in yourself, their entire false image has nowhere left to stand. And that is a kind of profound, naked humiliation that they can't dress up, explain away, or ever escape from. 6. Your existence has become an unsolvable equation in their mind. They cannot stop thinking about you. But it's not out of admiration or even healthy curiosity. It is out of sheer, tormenting confusion. You have become the unsolvable equation that refuses to add up in their mind. The distorted, diminished version of you that they so carefully constructed in their head no longer matches the glorious reality that is unfolding right in front of them. And this cognitive dissonance is driving them crazy. They are caught in a mental loop, replaying every conversation, every smirk, every doubt, every insult they ever threw your way. They are desperately trying to find the variable they missed, to figure out how they got their calculations so catastrophically wrong. How did someone they so confidently dismissed, ignored, and looked down upon turn out to be exactly who they claimed to be all along? They simply cannot accept the truth. You weren't pretending to be something you weren't. You were preparing to become everything you were meant to be. You weren't trying to look like something. You were in the sacred process of becoming it. And that massive disconnect between what they thought of you and who you truly are is eating away at them from the inside. This isn't just simple embarrassment. It is a form of profound mental torment. They are now stuck, day and night, trying to explain the unexplainable. How did their absolute certainty in your failure turn out to be the single biggest miscalculation of their entire life? It haunts them that you didn't force anything. You didn't argue or plead your case. You didn't waste your breath trying to convince them. You just lived your truth. And now, the proof of your life is so loud that it echoes in their silence. It's in the confident way you carry yourself. It's in the palpable peace that surrounds you. It's in the way doors of opportunity swing open for you. Doors they swore to you would forever remain shut. They thought they were making a safe bet by doubting you. But that bet has aged like spoiled milk. Every single moment they rejected you now feels like a priceless investment they foolishly missed. And they are the ones paying the hefty price, not just with a sense of regret, but with the slow, agonizing, painful realization that they completely misjudged someone who was operating with divine authenticity from day one. The more you evolve and elevate, the harder it becomes for them to justify the shabby way they treated you. They can't rewrite the past, but they are desperately trying to understand how their own calculations could have failed so spectacularly. And that is the real torment. Knowing that the person they so casually threw away is now the answer they can't stop needing. And they will never, ever quite figure out how they let someone so precious slip right through their hands. 7. They didn't just doubt you. They actively campaigned against you. This was never a passive disagreement. They didn't just quietly harbor their doubts and keep them to themselves. No. They made it their personal mission to turn other people against you. It wasn't enough for them to doubt you on their own. They desperately needed an audience. They needed a following, a small, sad army of other people who also couldn't see your divine light. They had to validate their own poor judgment by recruiting others into their camp of disbelief. They talked about you in group chats, twisting your words and intentions. They threw subtle, and not so subtle, shade in public gatherings. They took your flaws and exaggerated them under a microscope, painting a caricature of you that was barely recognizable. They maliciously planted seeds of doubt in people's minds before you even had a chance to speak for yourself. You must understand that it was never personal growth they were after. It was character assassination. They could not understand the depth of your spirit, so they tried to destroy the integrity of your reputation. This is the classic playbook of insecure people when they feel threatened by someone who doesn't beg for their approval. You were never trying to compete with them, but they perceived your very existence as a threat to their fragile image. And instead of dealing with their own internal discomfort, they externalized it by trying to make sure nobody else would believe in you either. But what they didn't expect, what they never counted on, was for the truth to have a voice of its own. Over time, your unwavering consistency started to reveal what all their noise and gossip tried to cover up. People who had initially believed the lies started watching you more closely. And what they saw, your character, your grace, your quiet progress, simply didn't match the malicious rumors. Slowly but surely, the false narrative they spun began to unravel. And now, the very same people who once cheered against you are awkwardly silent. They don't know where to look when you enter a room. Because the truth has arrived, and it didn't need any backup. Now, they are not just wrestling with a private sense of guilt. They are facing public exposure. Their campaign against you wasn't just wrong, it was cruel. And the worst part for them is that they did it out loud, boldly, and repeatedly in front of everyone they knew. So now, they don't just owe you an apology. They owe the very concept of truth and apology. You didn't need to clap back. You didn't have to play dirty. You just stood firmly in your truth until the lie collapsed under its own weight. They didn't just get it wrong. They tried to bury something divine. And now that it has risen, they are the ones left sitting in the dirt, trying to explain to themselves and to others why they ever picked up a shovel in the first place. This entire journey, this vindication, is a testament to your spirit. It's a testament to your connection with the divine, a core value we cherish here at God Connection. Your story is a living sermon on the power of faith and authenticity. Let this be a powerful reminder. You did not win a battle. You simply allowed a divine truth to be revealed. Your victory was ordained the moment you chose your calling over their commentary. You are not just a survivor. You are a living, breathing testament to the fact that God's plan cannot be vetoed by a committee of doubters. So walk forward in this victory, not with pride, but with the quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who knows their worth was never in question. You are the evidence. You are the proof. And their silence is the loudest applause you will ever need. If this message has touched your heart and confirmed what your spirit has been telling you, let's build this community of truth seekers together. Please like this video, as it helps the message reach more people who need it. Drop a comment below and share a piece of your story. And most importantly, if you haven't already, subscribe to the God Connection channel and hit the notification bell. This is more than a channel. It is a movement for those who are ready to embrace their divine anointing. Let's continue to grow, heal, and rise together as a family. God bless you abundantly.